All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for joining the Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference for a community dialogue on health and well-being. My name is Ali Amora. I am the president of the Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference, or HPKCC, and I'll be your host for tonight. As many of you just heard, please note that the event is being recorded. Tonight's forum is HPKCC's third community dialogue of 2021 and our 11th community dialogue since our very first event on COVID-19 in April of 2020. Tonight's forum is a chance for us to hear from experts on health and well-being and to get some of our questions answered. Our four distinguished presenters will discuss 5 keys to lowering obesity, diabetes, and hypertension in our communities, prostate cancer awareness and early detection, community mental health and resilience, as well as tips for healthy and plant-based eating. So thank you all for taking the time to be with us tonight, including those of you who are joining us for the very first time. Welcome and welcome back to those of you who have attended our prior community dialogues. Before we begin, I want to take a minute to tell you a little bit about our organization that's hosting tonight's event, the Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference, or HPKCC. HPKCC is an independent community organization founded in 1949, whose mission is to connect people in a diverse, green, and safe community. We convene groups and individuals to network and build community around multi-generational activities, community resources, and major issues that affect our future. HPKCC's continuing goal is to meet the needs of an ever-changing community. Since April of 2020, as I mentioned, HPKCC has held more than 10 of these community dialogues. We've attracted hundreds of attendees on both Zoom and even more on Facebook Live. You can view all of those past recordings of the community dialogues on HPKCC's YouTube channel and on our website, www.hydepark.org. And tonight's community dialogue on health and well-being is a continuation of that community building and information sharing that's occurred during our prior events. We encourage everyone to visit our website, www.hydepark.org, and to become a member of our organization and to sign up to receive updates. So now I'll quickly run through our schedule for the evening. We'll begin with presentations on health and well-being with 4 invited guests whom we will introduce in just a few moments. And then after the presentation, we'll open it up for questions and answers. You'll be able to put your questions in the chat. You can also raise your hand in the Zoom app if you want to ask your question live. We'll then call on you, and participants who wish to ask questions live will be given 1 to 2 minutes to ask questions. And we'll go back and forth between live questions and questions on the chat. We can't always guarantee that we'll get to everyone's questions, but we'll do our best, time permitting. So just as a reminder to all of our participants, please remember this is a public forum out of respect for everyone and all the participants. Please use appropriate language, keep your questions and comments brief and to the topic at all times. And HPKCC reserves the right to mute or remute participants for inappropriate comments or comments that don't relate to the topic at hand. And as another reminder, we are recording currently. And it looks like we are live on Facebook. So without further ado, we will begin our community dialogue on health and well-being today. Our first distinguished guest is Alicia Harley, MPH and founder and CEO of Prevention Advisory Group. So Alicia, please take it away.
Thank you. I wanted to ask the group today, have you ever had a plumbing problem? Many of us have, and they are incredibly annoying and difficult to manage. Who wants clogged drains or backed up pipes or any of that? We go through a lot of trouble to make sure that our drains are clear, that there's fresh running water in our homes that is clear and wonderful to drink. And we try to make sure that our plumbing is free and clear of all clogs. We do that as a preventive measure to make sure that there's good flow within our homes. What about our bodies? What about the plumbing systems that work inside of our own bodies? Are we contributing to flow, or are we causing backups and clogs? I want to talk to you today about 5 normals, and it appears that my dog wants to talk to you about them as well. I'll show you. So with me here, Cassius, come here, say hello, is Cassius Clay Harley. He's a boxer. He is very vocal, as you can tell, and is apparently trying to join in on the conversation. Say hello.
Welcome, Cassius.
Right. So back to our conversation. What if within our homes, we were running Coca-Cola through our faucets, or that cookies and cakes and sticky pies were clogging our drains? We have a responsibility to make sure that we are contributing to flow throughout our systems, and so that we're getting fresh, clean water into our bodies, so that we're getting vegetables and fruits and all of the healthy things that some of my colleagues are going to talk to you about today, so that we can live healthy well into old age. Some of you may know I recently lost my mother to metabolic disease. It started off in her as obesity, and then diabetes, and then hypertension, and then atrial fibrillation, and then amputation. She went through any number of challenges. Now, I do have to say that my mother was a trooper. She always had a positive attitude through all of it. But if she could have talked to her younger self about these 5 keys that I'm going to talk to you about today, it could have made all the difference in her life. And no matter how much she tried to turn it around, it was really hard for her. She gave a good fight. But I'm going to share these keys with you. Hopefully it will make a difference in your life and will give you the opportunity to live well into your 90s and 100s, and live have a better chance than she did. So what is the first key? The first key is making sure that your fasting blood sugar is less than 100. How many of you have gone to the doctor and they've said, I want you to come in, I want you to be fasting when you come in so that we can do a blood test? Has that happened to any of you? All right. The reason that they want to do that is they want to have a good understanding of your flow. If your blood sugar is greater than 100 for a sustained period of time, what happens is your blood begins to get sticky and thick. And if it's sticky and thick, then it can't flow through the body the way that it needs to. It makes it harder for it to take oxygen to your brain, to your lungs, to all of the vital organs throughout your body and to your cells, so that you can lead a healthy life. So that first one is you want to make sure that your fasting blood sugar is less than 100. What's the second key? The second key is around cholesterol. Many of you have heard people talk about, oh, you want to make sure that your bad cholesterol levels are low, and they'll give you points and tips on how to manage those numbers. And we can talk about that a little bit, but why do we care about bad cholesterol? Why is that such a big part of our conversation? Because cholesterol, similarly, can make your blood sticky and thick. It can create what looks like little potholes or road bumps within your arteries that make it more difficult for blood to flow through. And again, it's all about the flow. We want it to flow. We don't want your arteries to be so narrow from all of that cholesterol that has built up within the arteries that it can't move quickly. And if it can't move quickly, then you can't get the oxygen that you need to your brain as quickly as you can. And you may feel tired or sluggish or struggle to get up a flight of stairs. But these are the kinds of things that we want to monitor. The next key is, is your blood pressure. Blood pressure is probably the easiest monitor of flow, right? Because as your flow decreases, your blood pressure increases. Blood pressure is if your blood pressure is high, it's telling you that your heart has to work particularly hard in order to get blood through your system, that your flow is not good, that there's something that we've got to do to change that. And so from time to time, if you don't have high blood pressure, once in a while, at least during your annual physical, if not once a quarter, find a blood pressure monitor, whether you're at the gym or in Walgreens, they're all over the place. And take your blood pressure and just take a look at what it is. Have conversations with your doctor about your numbers, because you want to make sure that your blood pressure maintains in that normal range to stay healthy. Now, this one is a really easy one that you can monitor at any given moment. Is your waist less than half of your height? So if you are 5 feet tall or 60 inches, your waist should be no more than 30 inches. Now, there are many of us that would love to have a waist much smaller than 30 inches. But as a general rule, if you can make sure that if you're 5 feet tall, your waist is less than 30 inches, then you're in a healthier position than many Americans. Now, if you're 6 feet tall, then you'll want to make sure that your waist is less than 36 inches. Okay, and so that gives you a measure so that you can know. So for men, it's easy for you. Your pants tell you your waist size. Your belts tell you your waist size. For women, it's a little, we have to pull out the measure. We have to see, because our clothes don't tell us what our waist circumference is. And so sometimes it's a little easier for us to let that go. But go ahead and make that measurement and track that. It's one of the things that you'll want to make sure is in the right range. The fifth key is being a non-smoker. Okay. And I mean non-smoker in every sense of that word. There are, whether it's cigarettes or cigars or vaping or any other number of things, smoking is really bad for our health. Most cigarettes, vapes, all of those have a number of toxic chemicals that we know cause cancer. There's no doubt, there's no question. We have known for a very long time that they cause cancer. And not only does it cause cancer, it also raises the blood pressure and any number of other things. And so being a non-smoker is critical. So let me just refresh you on what the 5 things are, the 5 keys are. So the first one is making sure that your blood sugar is less than 100, that your cholesterol, the LDL, is less than 130, that your blood pressure is less than 125/85, and then that your waist is less than half your height, and that you are a non-smoker. If you keep these in mind, you'll take 10 years out of your life. And so my call to action, what I'm going to charge you with, is something that I'm going to do. For the next 6 weeks, I'm going to, every time I consider eating or drinking something, I'm going to ask the question, does this beverage, does this food help to increase flow within my own plumbing system? And if it doesn't, I have to say no. If it doesn't increase flow, I have to say no. And so I'm going to encourage you that if you want to join me, text 5 Keys group at 33777. If you'd like to join, I have nothing to sell you. My business has nothing to do with you and your 5 keys. But if you want to join me in this journey, text 5 Keys group to 33777, and we'll get together once a week. We'll have a Zoom call for 7 weeks, and we'll hold each other accountable to living a long and healthy life. Thank you. Back to you, Ali.
Thank you very much, Alicia. That sounds like a great 7 weeks, and I think I'll be joining you. All right, thank you very much, Alicia. We'll move on to our next speaker. We'd like to welcome Rebecca Bauk, Project Manager at Us2 International. Rebecca, take it away, please.
Hi, Ali. Thank you. And I am scared now that I have to follow up after Alicia, because that was really quite amazing. So thanks, Alicia. But we're going from one plumbing to another, which is prostate cancer. So that's my lead in here. Hopefully everybody can see my screen. I am Rebecca Bauk. I'm with Us Two International, who is a prostate cancer support, education, and advocacy group. Here in Chicago is where we're headquarters, but we're international when it comes to what we do. So this is a really timely, this is really great time for me to be talking to you about prostate cancer, because this weekend is Father's Day. And one of the things I'm going to ask you to do is to start talking about prostate cancer to your friends and your family and your social circles. To help you do that, I'm going to talk a little bit about screening, what's involved. I'm going to let you know that prostate cancer is treatable. It's really quite important. Treatment navigation tools are available and are recommended for people who are diagnosed with prostate cancer, and I'm going to recommend support groups that are out there. So when we talk about prostate cancer, I want you to understand two things, screening and treatment options for people. When we do not talk about prostate cancer, misconceptions persists in the community. Men do not get tested and they don't know their treatment options, which really affects the morbidity rate when we're talking about prostate cancer. To understand why we don't talk about prostate cancer a little bit, we have to understand the way men in America see healthcare in general. There was a recent study that showed about 60% of men have reasons that they don't go see the doctor. One of them is if they don't feel sick, they don't go. And that is something that is in our society that we really do need to change. Preventative medicine is extremely important, not only when it comes to prostate cancer, but when it comes to health in general, when you're talking about heart disease and diabetes, all of these things, people can live longer and healthier lives if they go in to get screened for early detection and preventative medicine. So keep all of that in mind. And prostate cancer in general, there is a really big stigma when it comes to it. I come from a background in breast and ovarian cancer where I'm used to people being open to talking about their breast cancer journey. We live in a society where everybody wears pink in October to recognize that. It's not the same for prostate cancer. People don't talk about prostate cancer. Men in particular do not talk about it with their friends, their family, their coworkers, which isolates them, which isolates their family, which gives them a harder time when they're trying to find treatment options. And it really impacts their mental health. And the stigma is tied to a lot of things. And one of the main reasons is the sexual health effects that happen when you're talking about prostate cancer. But to talk about prostate cancer a little bit, you got to know a little bit about prostate. I'm not going to show you any anatomical drawings tonight of the prostate itself. They're available on the website should you want to see them, but you should know that it's a gland about the size and shape of a walnut that is located below the bladder and in front of the rectum. Now, with any sort of cancer, when cells divide in an abnormal way, they can form tumors. Prostate cancer starts in the prostate, and if it's left untreated, it can then leave the prostate and go to other areas of the body, which increases the mortality rate. Prostate cancer is the most common cancer in men in the United States, second to skin cancer. But the really, really important thing that you need to know that the 5-year survival rate in the United States for men who are diagnosed with early stage prostate cancer is over 99%. Almost 100% of men have the survival rate if you catch this early and get it treated. The majority of new diagnoses are localized, which means they're still in the prostate, which gives you more treatment options and increases the chance of survival. One of the things I wanted to jump in here is a link to the Health and Human Services Health Resources Administration page. I'm going to talk a lot about asking people to go get screened and asking people to understand their treatment options. I want you to know that there are resources available to help that. Should you be worried about not being insured or underinsured, or the financial complications that come along with these sorts of tests. So there are health centers available to help with preventative and primary care. And so they're out there. We also have resources on our webpage to help people with financial assistance as they're going through the prostate cancer journey. So what is screening for prostate cancer? There are two two types of screening for prostate cancer. Most people know the DRE, which is the digital rectal exam, which is the gloved finger exam that gets talked a lot about. But there is another one. It's called the PSA, which is the prostate specific antigen test. It is a blood test. And every doctor that I've talked to about prostate cancer will tell you that you should do both in conjunction with one another because they can tell you different things. But if you're only going to do one thing, getting a PSA screening so you know your baseline is important because you can track that over time and they can tell if you've got prostate cancer developing based on an elevation in your PSA test. So having a baseline screening, knowing your numbers and getting tested is really important. It's really important for early detection because there are no symptoms until the disease is in an advanced stage. So you're not going to know. So that statistic before that said that most men don't go unless they're feeling sick isn't going to help when it comes to prostate cancer and isn't going to help with a lot of cancer screenings. So going early and getting preventative testing is important. About 1 in 8 men will be diagnosed in their lifetime here in the United States. That's the overall population. That increases when you're talking about African-American men. The right age to start screening depends on your personal and your family history. So in general, there are high risk factors, which changes it. The general guideline is 50 men who are 55 to 69 years old should talk to their doctor about prostate cancer screening unless you fall into one of these higher risk categories. The older you get, it increases your chances of getting prostate cancer. African-American men have the highest incident rate for prostate cancer here in the United States. So their screening age is recommended to start at 40. African-American men get prostate cancer earlier than other ethnic groups here in the US. And they're twice as likely to die from it because it's aggressive forms of cancer and they're caught later. So there are a lot of reasons for it, but that is one of the reasons we say start the conversation at 40. Genetics also plays a role in prostate cancer. Any sort of cancer in your family, you should let your doctor know about it and tell them so they can work that into your plan, your screening plan. And Vietnam and Korean War veterans, as well as fighter pilots, have a higher incident rates for prostate cancer. So as far as treatment options are concerned, there are a lot. One of the misconceptions with prostate cancer is that if you get prostate cancer, you have to remove the prostate immediately. That is not the case, especially when it's found early. One of the biggest things that's happening here in the United States right now is called active surveillance, which is where they find prostate cancer, but it's contained, it's slow moving, so they can monitor it over time. So that is your treatment option. You're actively watching what's happening with the prostate. The other thing that you should be aware of when you're talking about treatment options for prostate cancer is there are a lot of clinical trials that are out there and they are an option for you. One of the things that we hear a lot in our support groups for men who have prostate cancer is they have treatment. They're upset with the treatment that they picked. You know, they didn't know all of the options. They weren't informed. They weren't aware of all the side effects, either the short or the long-term side effects of the treatment options. So understanding what they are, and then also getting support from people who have been there and who have gone through it is really important. So finding a support group or a support source, doesn't have to be a support group. It can just be somebody else to talk to about your journey is important. It's also important for loved ones. So at us too, we have a lot of different support groups that are available for caregivers, as well as men who are going through prostate cancer treatment. So there are a lot of resources available. It's a lot to take in. I understand that. We have patient navigation tools on our website, as well as our partner Zero, the End of Prostate Cancer. There are tools that you can print out and take. If you've been diagnosed with prostate cancer, you can take these tools in with you. So you have a checklist of all of the options available as far as treatment is concerned. Like I said, there's financial assistance as well as just support in general. So that is my little spiel, but please feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions about prostate cancer in general. But Ali, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. Yes, that was really great information. I have a few questions for later too. Okay, so thank you again, Rebecca. All right, our next guest and our next presenter is Jessie Allender. She's a registered dietitian and Coral nutrition coach. So Jessie, you can unmute. There you go. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for having me here. I'm going to share my screen. I haven't done this much, I know. Here we go. And then I click this button. Dun, dun. There we go. Okay. So today I was asked to present on the benefits of a plant-based diet for improved health and wellness. And I think that this really, segues nicely. Diet can't unfortunately prevent all cancers or many cancers. But what we do know is that diet can prevent many of the things that Alicia was referring to earlier. It can help you manage your blood sugar, your cholesterol, your blood pressure, and keep that waist to height ratio, which is a new tool for me. I've used a few other height and waist monitors, but that's a great one. I love having that around. So here we go. First of all, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Jessie Allender, native Hyde Parker, registered dietitian. I mostly work with children and families through the early intervention program, doing nutrition support and helping them navigate gaining weight, losing weight, tube feedings, all sorts of things. But I also I also help adults in my coaching practice with their nutrition issues. And of course, my real full-time job is managing these people you see in the picture as they run around and eat food and do all sorts of things like that. And like I said, I'm a native Hyde Parker, and I'm a huge fan of the Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference. My mom is a veteran of the office. She worked there for a long time back in the 70s. And I used to make dittos on the ditto machine that they had because that was fun. Anyway, all right. So what is a plant-based diet? Here we go. Is that it? Onion rings, French fries, cakes and cookies, right? This is all made out of plants, right? No. So a plant-based diet can be horrible choices. And so that's not it. And sometimes people say I'm using a plant-based diet, but they're generally not picking junk like this. And I'm not insulting any of these brands. Everything's okay in moderation, but this is technically a plant-based diet. And what this stuff is mostly made out of is what we grow here in Illinois, corn and soy. This is what we produce. This is what our farmers grow. And if it's not turned into sugar and candy and junk food, it's turned into beef and pork and chicken. And it also, meat and dairy production accounts for about 15% of global greenhouse gas emissions. So again, like this is what we grow here. This is my little stool that I'm going to stand on for a second to just think about it. When we're talking to people, these are plants, but that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about a plant-based diet to address health issues. So these foods are made from corn and soy. Something large just fell down behind me. I don't know what it was. We'll find out later. This is not what we want to go for. But when you're looking at this junk food, I want you to look at this junk food and then look at this food. This is getting closer to a plant-based diet, but still we have to be careful because these are better choices. But if you see down on the right corner, bottom corner, all of these healthier for you plant-based foods is still a lot of junk food when it comes down to it. In moderation, it's going to be fine. Like the juice above, in moderation, it's going to be fine. But if you're drinking a lot of juices all the time, that's not going to help you really hit these notes that we're going to find in a truly plant-based diet for health. And even hummus, right? Hummus is delicious and wonderful, and I enjoy it. And this dish, that picture that I chose is doused in oil. Now it's a healthy oil, but it's a lot of oil. And our commercial hummus is going to be a lot of fat in it. And so it's not just only choosing plant foods, but looking at how the plant foods are made. So these I call deceptive choices. There's healthier products in the grocery store, but they're still highly processed and ready to eat. And so there might not be the greatest choices. And bottled fruit and vegetable smoothies might have more vitamins and minerals and fiber and even a little bit of protein than your typical orange juice or soda, but it's still juice. And juice after the first 4 to 6 ounces in a day is just going to be giving you extra sugar and not helping you control your intake and find the most beneficial diet. One of the things that each of us has inside us is what I like to refer to as a food thermostat. When we eat foods, when we chew foods, healthy foods, they're going to help us. We're going to know how much we need. There have been a lot of studies where people were allowed to eat as much as they wanted, and they only ate just what they needed to maintain their weight. And for kids, it's more about what they need to grow for the most part, when the food is not extremely enticing, when it's just tasty. But with drinks, we'll drink and drink and drink another 50% of what we need without judging it. And that's where our thermostat doesn't work, is when we're drinking. So it's not about counting calories, but it's about paying attention to when we are hungry. And one of my favorite things to talk about is when we're no longer hungry. Not when we're full, not when we're stuffed, but when we're no longer hungry. So if you're eating a diet full of plants, fruits, and vegetables, mostly vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, limited oils, we're going to eat all that fiber. We're going to feel nice and full if we're chewing it. If we're drinking it, it's not going to go so well for us. So chewing is really, really, really super important. So now let's get into the next. A healthy plant-based diet is a healthy diet made up of whole foods that are mostly plants or made from plants. The base or largest portion is going to be vegetables and as close to their natural state as possible. Salads, gently cooked greens, roasted veggies, raw, roasted, or baked tubbers like potatoes. Did it say covers in there too? Because my note said covers instead of tubbers. Sweet potatoes, parsnips, carrots, beets, cooked beans, nuts, seeds. These are the things that make up a healthy plant-based diet. And what I think you may have already noticed is that it's not very convenient. A healthy plant-based diet is going to require somebody to be doing the cooking, somebody to be doing the preparation in the household or in the group of people that are eating together. So there is a commitment to it. But it can be done and it can be delicious. This is from Forks Over Knives, which is a great organization that supports plant-based eating. And this is what, it's really all about. A nice bowl, maybe there's some black rice or, it's a quinoa bowl they have pictured here. You can see the red quinoa over to the right side on the top, and chickpeas and kale and beets and carrots and avocado, or maybe that's zucchini. But we want veggies to be like the real big, like a big bowl of leafy greens with some protein on it, because a plant-based diet is not necessarily vegetarian. It's mostly vegetarian, but you don't have to eliminate the animal-based foods. We just limit them, which helps to limit our greenhouse, our footprint and other things. Fruits fit in. Fresh fruits cut for snacks or dessert or breakfast. Fruit is sugar and does contribute to higher blood sugar, so it should be kept in moderation, but 3 or 4 nice servings a day, especially when it's whole fruit, not juices, is great. Grains are a big part of it, especially whole grains, which are pretty much always processed. Bread is a processed food. Pasta is a processed food. I always like to recommend a mixture of pastas, and I love that we have a TJ's and we have Hyde Park Produce and we have Whole Foods now, and all these stores where you can get regular pasta, you can get whole wheat pasta, you can get half and half bean pasta. It's one of my favorites. I don't work for them. I don't hold stock. Barilla Plus is my favorite because it's half wheat and half beans. And then there's like the bean pasta, Ancient Greens, there or Modern Table, or all the other brands that are available in the neighborhood and around the world that are made from beans. They're processed, but we need, a little bit of processed foods. It's not Flamin' Hots. So plant-based or plant-forward eating patterns focus on foods primarily from plants and fruits and vegetables, but then the nuts give us fats, omega-3s, seeds give us fats and omega-3s, which are really going to help us, sustain ourselves and feel full, because that feeling of satiety is important. And a lot of times that comes from when we eat fats. So, and also things like avocado. And a plant-based diet can offer all of the protein, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals that we need, and fiber and phytonutrients, lots of phytonutrients. Phytonutrients are the parts of plants that we really don't know what they are. That's why we just call them phytonutrients. People do study them, people know what they are, but the more colorful, the more flavorful, fresh vegetables, whole grains are, the more phytonutrients they're going to have, and having a wide variety of them is what's going to help you gain health from this kind of diet. So here's a list I like a lot, also put out by Forks Over Knives, that just compares the different diets. A vegan diet is all the way over on the left, plant-based diet in the middle, and a whole food plant-based diet that they call is over on the right. And you can see that, in that the vegan diet and the plant-based diet both have nice amount of oils in them, which are important for health, help us feel full, help us get our essential fatty acids, but also, a vegan diet, no animal products whatsoever. A plant-based diet, they're just avoid or use them a little bit less. So like you have a big bowl of quinoa with some sauteed kale and some delicious sun-dried tomatoes on there, and then maybe a few ounces of chicken. One of the ways to think about this is to shift the focus away from protein. A lot of people say, what are you having for dinner? And the answer is, well, I'm going to have a steak and maybe some asparagus. But if you shift your thinking to having a really nice asparagus dish with some beef on the side, that's plant-based diet. And that's having beef as meat as flavor, or chicken as flavor. Red meat, of course, contributes to more diseases than other proteins. So definitely want to do some moderation there. Here's an interesting game for you. Let's guess what these foods are. It's 4 ounces of a protein food. I can't see the chat, so I'll just give the answer after a few minutes, but I just wanted to play this game. One has 170 calories for 4 ounces. One has 240 calories. That's a lot of calories. What is it? Okay, everybody's got their guesses in mind. The 170 calories is 4 ounces of ground white meat turkey that you could cook into a burger. The 240 calories in 4 ounces is Impossible Burger. Now, it also has 2,350% of a day's requirement of thiamine, which thiamine is a water-soluble vitamin, so we don't worry about it becoming toxic, but that is not good. We want our vitamins and minerals to come in right about 100% most days. So Impossible Burger, eat it, enjoy it, but no, I call it a frankenfood. It's really highly processed. It is plant-based. It has a ton of iron in it, which is awesome. The iron you can see in the Impossible Burger is a lot higher than in the turkey because it's white meat turkey. But this is where balance, moderation, plant-based diets I like a lot because it's not a no meat diet. I think diets that exclude a food group can be a disservice, and we can miss out on some B12 and some other nutrients. So balance, have an Impossible Burger. I know a lot of people love them. And definitely, it also has 3 grams of fiber, and turkey has no fiber. So it's a balance. But know that some processed vegan foods and plant-based foods can be very high in calories. So if obesity is one of the issues, if high calories is one of the issues that you're trying to address in your diet, then know that being plant-based doesn't mean being low calorie. So here's 8 ways. I borrowed this. I have my sources at the end. So, I was just pulling together some information, but I love this list. I think I either got this from Harvard or from Forks Over Knives, but I have the links on my last slide. 8 ways to get started with a plant-based diet. If you want to make a change, this is a plant-based diet can definitely be a great change. It can help you lower your cholesterol. It can help you get your blood pressure in check if you monitor the sodium as well. And oftentimes with plant-based diets, people want some more seasoning on there. So use cayenne and use garlic and use onion, but don't use accent or other salt-based seasonings, right? We want to just use the herbs to season, but eat lots of vegetables. Make kale the focus of the meal. And if you want to call me later, we can talk about how to cook kale. I'd love to get into it. And change the way you think about meat. This is shifting the focus away. What are you having for Thanksgiving? Turkey. How about what are you having for Thanksgiving? Roasted sweet potatoes with a little bit of turkey sausage on the side, right? Switch the way you think about it. So the focus, the main part is preferably the greens, and then the grains and the beans. We want to choose healthy fats, nuts, avocado oil, olive oil. Those are healthy fats. Our unsaturated fats. For prostate cancer, I was doing a little research. We do want to avoid flax oil because there's some research that's connecting flax oil consumption, which has ALA fatty acids that are not good for prostate cancer. But anyway, this list was to cook a vegetarian meal at least one night a week. If you're really going plant-based, you're going to do a vegetarian meal 5 nights a week and maybe have meat 2 nights a week or some kind of proportion like that, but work into it slowly. Get started. Start with one, meatless Mondays or some other moniker you can remember. And then we want to include whole grains at breakfast and other times. Most people only eat corn, rice, and wheat. Where's the amaranth? Where's the black rice? Where's the quinoa? Where's the millet? Break out, try something new. There's lots of great grains to eat out there. Go for greens. Like I said, I keep talking about kale, but romaine and spinach and broccoli and cauliflower and Romanesco and bok choy and cabbage and red cabbage. And there's just so many out there. So I'm going to plug Hyde Park Produce because it's my favorite store. Go there, buy something you've never eaten before. I love Romanesco. It's the one with the really cool swirls, the green cauliflower looking thing with the swirls. It's delicious. Steam it and eat it. Build a meal around a salad and eat fruit for dessert. Now, sometimes that doesn't go so well, so put a piece of chocolate on it because dark chocolate is good for you too, and it's very satisfying. Enjoy your meals. Breathe while you eat. And remember to try to figure out when you're not hungry, not when you're full. Not hungry comes before not full. So with that, thank you very much for having me. And there are the websites that I hit up for some of this information. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessie. I have lots of questions for you too. Can we stop the share for just a minute? And actually, if we could, maybe Jessie, if you could put those references maybe in the chat as well, that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Jessie. All right, now we'll move on to our next and final speaker. We want to welcome Tiara Malone-Zaccaro, who is a clinical program director at Metropolitan Family Services Calumet Center. So without further ado, Tiara, please take it away.
Sure. Now I'm hungry, so thank you, Jessie. Thinking of healthy snacks. Let me see if I'm gonna share. I'll try sharing my screen. Okay. Let's do slideshow. Alrighty, perfect. Okay. Well, good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. As Ali stated, my name is Tiara Malone-Zaccaro. I'm a clinical program director at Metropolitan Family Services. I've been providing clinical services in community and private sector for over about 12 to 13 years now. And so I'll be speaking with you for about 10 to 12 minutes or so about mental health. I definitely would try to keep it to that time clock because I know I can probably talk about mental health for hours. And I do believe that later we're going to have a Q&A discussion. So hopefully we can get better in connection and more dialogue a little bit later. So we're going to talk about mental health and resiliency. Okay. Some of the objectives that we're going to be discussing tonight is defining mental health, what it is and what it isn't, factors that contribute to mental illness. We're going to do a reflection exercise, talk about ways to promote resiliency, and then followed by a visualization activity, and just briefly highlight some community resources for everyone to have at their disposal afterwards. So let's dive right in. So what is mental health? Well, mental health includes our emotional, our psychological, our social well-being. Basically, it affects how we think, how we feel, how we behave. It's our overall level of functioning, which is why we assess that in areas of how we're able to be productive in our work, either maybe school, in our home lives, even in our relationships. What do our relationships look like? Because that can also affect our mental health. Mental and physical health are equally components of our overall health, which is why I'm glad we're having this discussion, because it falls right in line with what everyone was discussing. Often mental health and mental illness, the terms can be used interchangeably, although they are two separate things. Poor mental health and mental illness are not the same thing. And it's not synonymous, because just like someone could be not feeling well, it doesn't mean they have a serious illness. And just like if someone has a mental or compromising in their mental health, doesn't mean that it reflects something that they're struggling with, or is more chronic, or it's more acute. So we just want to keep that in mind, because I know that there's also a stigma about mental illness, but of course, if there's any impact in our level of functioning that needs to be adapted, or we're having some troubles adapting to our well-being or our life, then it's okay to get help or assistance. So if we may think of what factors contribute to mental illness, right? And like, well, Thierry said, they're not the same, but there could be some similarities. Or if we don't check our mental health, then we can, if our mental health goes unchecked and we have poor mental health, then we can ensue some consequences that can induce mental illness. Like if you have poor health and you ignore the signs and symptoms, then it can develop into a serious illness. So some of the factors are a biological, it could be a chemical imbalance, it could be heredity, it could be some type of brain chemistry, or even a brain injury. It could be psychological, trauma, childhood trauma. It could be neglect, abuse that one may have experienced. It can also be environmental, right? Just environmental stressors that we may have. And it's just like that compound stress. There is actually studies that experts says 80% of illnesses may be related to chronic stress. Stress is linked to current leading causes of death, including heart disease, cancer, lung ailments, accidents, as well as suicide. And also there's this phenomenon that a term that was coined is called allostatic load. And I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that. Basically, it's the cumulative burden of chronic stress in life events. When the environmental challenges that exceeds an individual's ability to cope. The constant production of stress hormones, basically, without having kind of like an off switch. If you think about it, it's almost like the wear and tear of our body. For example, if perhaps you were almost in a car collision, right? So your stress hormones have been activated, and your body is preparing itself for the fight or flight mode, right? To protect it, because it's acknowledging that danger is approaching. Your sympathetic nervous system is being activated, right? Now, just earlier, before you got into your car, you may have had a stressful day at your job. Maybe your colleague said something, or you was just stressed by just your work environment. And now you're almost evade an accident, and now you're going home, and then now you have to deal with maybe kids running around or getting dinner on the table. And so it's this constant exposure to stress where you don't have any reprieve or time just to kind of take a step back for yourself. And so that impacts our overall health and can ultimately impact our well-being as we age. So that constant nonstop of alarming part of the phenomenon that is often that the thing that's so alarming about this particular stressor is because we're often not aware of it. We're not cognizant of these things. We're perhaps, it's this amount of stress that we just think, oh, it's just our day-to-day life, and not thinking that it's really impacting our overall well-being and our health. So what are some of the early warning signs to look out for? Well, there's lack of interest in previous enjoyed activities, feeling helpless, feeling hopeless, mood changes, persistent or intrusive thoughts, hearing things or seeing things that are not there. So like hallucination or auditory things that you may be occurring, inability to perform daily tasks, activities at school, home, or work, thinking of harming yourself or others, lack of sleep, loss of appetite, increase or decrease in weight gain. Could be just some things. And again, it's not limited to this list. There could be other things that we want to just think about. So you may say, well, here, I may experience this all the time. And so just to hold that thought, because we're gonna just talk about something else. Just as a way of reflection, this past year, again, with that list we just saw, you may have said, well, that was my whole year. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that this collective trauma, collective stress that we all experience this over 15 months or so, and continue to experience. Some of us have had to deal with, we all had to deal with the pandemic. We had to deal with social unrest, civil unrest. We may not have been able to see our loved ones. The political arena got pretty nasty at some times. And we also experienced scarcity, right? Sometimes, some of us experience the anxiety of going to the grocery store and not being able to get what you need. So again, all of that we have been holding in our bodies. And a lot of times we don't acknowledge how we may feel about these things. So I would just ask you just to take a moment. You can write it down, you can put it in your phone, but just reflect on what these pictures or these things may be invoked in you, in your body, how you may feel. And just note it. We don't want you to do anything with it, but just pay attention to that. Some of us may have anniversary of maybe some of our dead loved ones that we lost during COVID, and or still dealing with the effects of COVID, right? We're still in the pandemic, but I know that recently in the city of Chicago, the city was open. And this past weekend, I know I was assessing my own anxiety level of the mask being on and mask being off, or being in the supermarket. And now everyone, didn't have their masks on, people being next to me, or being close in my social proximity. So we're still wrestling with that. And that's anxiety, I guess, cumulative anxiety that we're all feeling, in addition to the other things that we're going through in our personal, even professional lives. So again, I just want you to note it, how you feel, and even mark that down for yourselves, and even like how you may feel inside your bodies too. So although I would wish that we all could get on a boat and just escape all the stressors that I just showed you, and maybe continue to do, we may say, well, how do I avoid this wear and tear of my body with all these stressors? Do I abandon my kids? Do I tell my job, give my boss my 2 weeks or maybe my day notice? Do I just escape to an island just so I can say, hey, I'm just trying to promote a positive mental, take care of my mental health, and make sure you're not taking any years off my life by these stressors? I wish we could do that, but we can't, unfortunately. So what are some things we can do to promote resiliency? Well, one thing we can do is get help. Sometimes we're in a culture that says that, pull yourself by your bootstraps and that you can be okay. Just will yourself into feeling all right. And sometimes that may work and sometimes that may not work. So making sure that we are getting the necessary help that we need. If we find like those symptoms that I just displayed, if they're persistent or they're more chronic, then it's definitely okay to tag someone, or it's okay to tag someone if you just need another support system or a resource. Practice self-regulation techniques. As I mentioned about what can induce with the stress, the sympathetic nervous system can be activated. Now, what we want to do is try to activate the parasympathetic system, which means that we want to calm ourselves down when our nervous system is actually activated and escalated in a way. So we can do that by providing self-regulation techniques, such as the body scan, mindfulness, regulating breathing exercises. And these are some things that you can do in front of people. Just say if you're rushing to a meeting and you may say, hey, I'm sorry, I need a moment, I need to self-regulate. That's okay, because again, that helps promote our own positive and healthy well-being. Connection and support is another thing. As human beings, we often like to isolate ourselves, and that doesn't help us to be an ability to be able to co-regulate with other people. I know I'm probably dating myself, but I remember T-Mobile have that your top 5 or high 5 or something like that, your 5 people in your network or your system. So having those folks, it doesn't have to be 5 people, it could be 2, it could be 3, but having some people that you can feel that you have a healthy relationship with so that you can be able to connect with them. Again, we're trying to go against the grain. Your brain is going to want you to isolate and deal with things alone. But like we often say about trauma happens in isolation, healing happens in the group. So just implore you to reach out to your support systems. And if you don't have any, then learn how to develop or try to seek out those people that you can go to. Self-care and regular exercise is really important. Taking baths, walks, healthy diet, as was mentioned earlier, pets, routine medical checkups, making sure you get, your annual medical exam, spiritual religious practices, writing, journaling, music, art, spending time in nature, and et cetera. And this list is not extensive. Certainly there could be other things that you can do. I know for myself, things that I used to do for self-care pre-pandemic, I wasn't able to do those things during the pandemic. And so it's okay to reassess what are the things that you need to do for yourself, and have multiple things. What we often tell the kids is, have multiple tools in your toolkit box so that if something is not working, you can try something else and have that available to you. So here are some additional self-nurturing activities, physical activities, breathing practices, positive social interactions, laughter, affection, crying, mindfulness, activating your 5 senses, creative expression, self-compassion, and gratitude are some things that, again, this is not limited, but you can definitely do to promote that healthy, to promote self-care. So if we can just take a moment just to connect. I know I was stressed because I hate public speaking, even though I'm asked to do it. I don't know if you can tell. But so I was definitely trying to activate some calming, do some calming techniques for myself. So what I want you to do is just, notice how your body is feeling if you're sitting in a chair or if your arm is rested on something. Just kind of feel the weight of yourself. Wiggle your toes, maybe your fingers, and then really just focus on this picture. Notice the waterfall, the color of the trees. Notice the water and imagine yourself there. What would the wind feel like against your skin? What will the air feel like? Will it be crisp? Would you hear some birds in the background? And just put yourself there for a second and try to close out everything else that's probably in the background, just the white noise. And then, that list that you made earlier, you jot down some of the things that you were feeling. Now jot down some things that you're feeling now. How does it feel in your body? Do you still feel weight? Do your shoulder feel tense? Do your neck feel stiff? And just pay attention to that. And this is an activity that you can do every day, as often as you would like to do it. Again, it helps us to connect with our mind and body, and it helps us to listen to our bodies to know what's going on. We're always in a rat race. We're always on the go. Again, it's that wear and tear of our bodies. With a car that you're driving and you're always traveling far, you're going to rack up mileage. You're going to need to take it in for the oil change, for the checkup, for the maintenance, if you want the longevity of the car to be sustainable and to be in good working condition. That's the same with our bodies. So taking out 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds of your day, doesn't matter if you're a busy mom, if you are a person that has a lot of responsibility or responsible for a lot of people or caregiver, these are things that you can definitely do for yourself. And I definitely implore and ask that you guys do that because it's very beneficial to promote a positive mental health. And again, even though our physical health and our mental health are related. What impacts our mental health impacts our physical health. What impacts our physical health impacts our mental health. And we'll be remiss if we didn't acknowledge that. So I'm just going to do some resources of Metropolitan Family Services. We offer, we're a non-for-profit social service agency, but in addition to clinical services that we offer, we also have other programs for the community. And so here's our website if you want to know where our centers are, and our intake number if you wanted to call, and then someone can connect you with appropriate resource. I also put NAMI Chicago helpline on here. They have, and I'm sorry, I forgot to put their website. They have a lot of resources as well available for the public. And then I put the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline on there for you guys as another resource. So thank you all for your kind attention. And I look forward to answering any questions later.
Thank you so much, Tiara. And thank you to all of our guests and our speakers. This has been really wonderful, a lot of great information. Okay, so we're wrapping up by 7:30, so we have the next 20 minutes or 23 minutes or so for questions and answers. So I want to open it up to the floor. You can feel free to either just raise your hand in the chat or raise your hand here or unmute yourself, but the floor is open. All right, I'll start then. I have some questions. So, and actually, we did have a question we had one question from someone who registered for the event ahead of time. And actually, we'll start with that. So the question was that to all of our guests to please talk about helping or how we can help children who are overweight or obese. And so as a parent or as a caregiver, so if I can pose that to all of our guests, anyone who wants to take that and give us your advice or respond will be great.
I'll jump in. First off, for the most part, with children, we don't want them to lose weight, but sometimes we do want them to grow into what they have. In certain instances, that's not the case. If there's obesity or very high weight that's causing metabolic disease, then more interventions are necessary. And I'm sure you'd be working with your pediatrician and other professionals to do that. But establishing optimal eating habits, being a model, bringing fruits, vegetables, fruits. We always say fruits and vegetables. It sounds better alliteratively, but it should be vegetables and fruits into the household. Flipping your default. Only whole grain bread unless you order something different. Only bean pasta unless a special occasion white bread pasta. And then helping them, I was talking before about when are you not hungry? Limiting distracted eating is really important. If kids are, chowing down on the popcorn, and it's the microwave kind with the butter built in, while they're watching the movie or, playing video games, they're not paying attention to their hunger if they're eating. There's lots of things like that. So it's about setting up the environment because kids can't eat what they don't have access to. Teenagers have a lot of access to stuff. So getting it in before they're teenagers that they want to snack on carrots and cucumbers instead of Flamin' Hots and what's something green, I don't know, Jolly Ranchers, is important. And making it personal, they have to choose it. We have to let go of the reins. Even with 2-year-olds, I instruct parents to let go of the reins and be like, I've put the food down for you. You choose what you're going to eat and if you're going to eat, and don't compensate. Like if they don't eat, oh well, but you don't get more food till the next meal. That's mostly how I address it.
Jessica, I don't work with children that frequently. I generally work with communities, but I'd love to get your insight on protein supplements for children. And is there a certain age, because there's some kids who have a really big appetite, my, very thin child included. And so I'd love to get your perspective on protein supplements for children.
Sure. So, I've got a 5-year-old boy who literally bounces all day long. He just bounces like Tigger. He's a Tigger. He just bounces. He doesn't need to take basketball lessons because he just bounces. And in general, healthy kids at a healthy weight, growing healthy, they need carbohydrates. That is where that energy comes from. It's from carbohydrates. All carbohydrate foods, including, unfortunately, Cheetos, have some protein in them. And Cheetos actually have cheese in them. I don't like Cheetos. I don't know why I keep talking about them. But if a child is at a normal weight, if a child can do what the other children can do, read the book, do the pull-up or the monkey bars, if they're strong, if they're growing, if they're running, we put food in front of them and let them eat. For the most part, a protein supplement, I would not recommend. Underweight kid, failure to thrive kid, kids who struggle to gain weight, sure. We can use like a shake or we can make them at home. I love making like an avocado, black bean, blueberry, and cocoa smoothie, right? So it's made out of fruits and vegetables at home in the blender. It's full of high calorie avocado, maybe some peanut butter. It's got a lot of protein from the beans in there. You could also put in a hard-boiled egg. It gives it an off flavor. If you just use the egg whites, that's a better flavor than if you add the egg yolk, but sometimes it's good with the egg yolk. But it has to be hard boiled because we want it to be cooked egg. It's going to be better than any of your highly processed protein powders. But if you're going to go buy a protein powder, dry milk, cheaper, easier, more natural. Non-fat, dry milk powder. Put a couple tablespoons of that in your smoothie. That is an excellent protein addition. If you're milk allergic and that's not an option, yeah, move on to soy, move on to pea protein. There's so many pea protein things out there now. I love pea protein milk for my GI kids that have a lot of GI bloating or just, bad symptoms. I go for Ripple or the other pea protein milks, drinking something like that. But typically our kiddos, we don't need much more than 50 grams of protein a day. It's individual, obviously work with a registered dietitian, work with the doctor, but 50 grams is a great target. And so 2 eggs, a cup of beans, 2 slices of bread. I'm not doing all of my math. I think I need about 2 more ounces of food. So 2 ounces of salmon and we're there. It adds up pretty quickly. And so I try to avoid supplements as much as possible. We want to get our nutrition from foods. If kids are struggling to gain weight, they should put peanut butter on and in everything, because it's, if we can have to live off of one food, it could be peanut butter. We can do it as human beings. That's why the UNICEF food cakes that we take to thoroughly impoverished areas where people are having kwashiorkor and starving children, it's a peanut butter and jelly sandwich mushed thing. It's a cookie that we give. That's what they take and throw out of the airplanes. It's mostly peanut butter.
Great. Thank you, Jessie. Okay, we'll go. I know Louise McCurry has her hand up, and then we'll go to the chat after Louise. Louise?
Sure. I want to say thank you so much for this session tonight, because it's the most timely thing we've done in a long time with this. I just wanted to address the elephant in the room, which is COVID and the effects of long haul COVID and how that's impacted each of your practices. I heard from the psychiatric worker the things she's doing, and that was wonderful. But I'd love to hear from the rest of you how you're looking at what your practice is going to see for the next at least 2 years with COVID long haul patients, and how you're adjusting for COVID patients, because that clearly is going to be the largest impact, in fact, it has been the largest impact in healthcare in this country in 100 years.
Well, I can jump in really quick and just say we've seen a lot of data come across, not only with prostate cancer, but with cancer in general. The screening numbers have gone way down. So we're really worried about the effects of what that's going to look like long-term, because people have stopped going in for screenings, and what that's going to do long-term when it comes to detecting cancers, not only prostate cancer, but cancer across the board. We got excited when we saw numbers that were coming out that was like, the rates are dropping, this is great, but it all was down to the fact that the rates were dropping because people aren't getting screened. So if I can, at us too, and a lot of the other cancer organizations across the United States, what we're trying to tell people is that to keep going in for your annual physicals, keep going in for your screening. It is important. Take the precautions you need to take in order to stay safe in this COVID environment, but do remember that cancer doesn't take a COVID holiday. So we need everybody to stay on top of it.
Thank you, Rebecca. Okay, thank you. And so we'll go to the chat, and then we'll go to file in after that. So Catherine Williams in the chat asked if Tiara could speak to the stress that is caused by living with poverty and violence, as many on the south and west side of Chicago deal with.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Thanks, Catherine, for asking that question. As you know, there is an abundance of that stress, right? We're talking about majority of our kids living in food deserts, not having accessibility to, healthy choices of food. It's the community violence that plagues the areas, and then just their little bodies are always in a hypervigilant state, right? It's almost like that sense of normalcy for them, and also given the lack of resources. So that does come up, right? That comes up in aspects of various traumas that are presented. And so what we do at a community setting is, one, try to make sure that we provide psychoeducation for the teachers that are with the kids majority of the time, so that they know not to be punitive, right, of the hypervigilance of their little bodies, their stress hormones, alarm systems that are currently out of whack because of the environmental conditions that they are in. And then making sure that they're informed with different alternatives to deal with some of the what they may deem as disruptive behaviors, which is also why social groups are so important in those communities. And so we try to also provide that for the kids as well. And of course, mental health for some of our clients. And again, recognizing the trauma and making sure that it is diagnosed appropriately and not being diagnosed as ADHD because of the environment. And so a lot of that is that psychoeducation piece, and understanding and noting what could be some of those stressors and not ignoring those factors. That way we can definitely inform treatment so that it's appropriate, and providing, like I said, the resources that's very much so needed in those communities. So I hope I answer your question. If I didn't, I can definitely, we could chat offline, or I can definitely elaborate if you want me to.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate your answer.
Thank you, Tiara, and thank you, Catherine, for the question. Okay, we'll go to Philin Crawford, former past president of HPKCC. Welcome, Philin.
Thank you, Ali, and thank you to all of our guest speakers. I wanted to ask Tiara, how do you charge for your services?
So we have a couple of different programs. So I oversee some of our grant funded programs, meaning that they are free based on eligibility. One of our programs, children could be enrolled and we can provide clinical services to them and their families if they've been exposed to trauma. And so it's for children from 0 to 5. However, if they have any older siblings, we can see them as well. So it's free to the families. We also are a fee-for-service program. So we see majority of Medicaid recipients. So most of our kiddos, they are insured. And so we will see them. And then for some of our adults, we accept some private commercial insurance as well. But that intake number that I provided, we have so many programs. And again, if it's not a program that we offer, we will definitely try to locate that for you, especially if it's if the fee is a problem, and we'll try to see what programs that someone can get into with a sliding scale fee, or if they're appropriate for one of our free programs that's paid for by the state.
Thank you, Tiara.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, Philin. I actually have a question for Alicia about the five keys. I guess which do you think is the most challenging for people to follow, and how can we readily address that? I kind of feel like I see the words like bad cholesterol and things like that, and I'm like, okay, what does that actually mean? How do I address that? And I think I can apply that to a lot of the keys as well. So could you maybe speak to that a little bit?
Sure, be happy to, and thanks for the question. So yes, some of the measures for some of us aren't easy to get on a day-to-day basis. The easiest ones are the two, that we all know: do we smoke or not, and what is our waist circumference? But the other three, there are tools that we can use to measure them. We can have a blood pressure cuff in our home. They're not all that expensive. The flexible spend accounts will often cover the cost of a blood pressure cuff or a blood sugar monitoring device. And many of us may know someone who has one of these things, or may be at a Walgreens, a CVS, or other places where we can definitely do blood pressure testing And blood sugar testing happens frequently, and blood cholesterol testing frequently at health fairs throughout the city. I've seen that the Chicago Department of Public Health and the Cook County Department of Public Health have begun to release their health fair dates. And so at a church or park near you, likely there may be opportunities to get these kinds of tests done. For those that are who really want to know their numbers, and the best place to know your numbers is on your annual visits to your doctor, and in conversation and in communication with someone who has a vested interest in your care and seeing you do well. Now, there's some of us, and I'm one of those people that, yes, I do my annual physicals, and sometimes I have to see my doctor a little more frequently, but I am not opposed to, in between those visits, going to a Quest lab or somewhere to see my numbers more frequently than that. I just like to know. And so there are tests that you can buy over the counter that you can use to monitor, but you don't have to go that far. If you're in the right weight range, if you're getting your annual physicals, if you happen to have one or two of these conditions and you're meeting with your doctor regularly, you may have the equipment already within your home, or someone in your home might have them. But if you'd like to get additional information, for those of you that joined the 5 Keys group, we'll go through each one of these over the next few weeks and just sort of talk through, what do they mean? Why do I want to monitor them? Do I want to monitor them based upon my own personal situation? Is it time for me to schedule a visit with my physician because I'm particularly concerned? I think there are many of us who picked up a few pounds during this pandemic. And so getting a checkup and monitoring our numbers a little more closely than we have in the past might be good advice.
Thank you,
Does that
Alicia.
help?
Yes, that helps a lot. And I joined. Okay, we have, I see you, Nina. We have Kathy Huff as a question in the chat, so we'll get to that. And if we are quick and we can finish that one, then we'll finish off with Nina. So Kathy had a question in the chat. Kathy Huff said, what resources are available to parents to deal with mental health issues and mental illnesses of their children besides those available through the Chicago Public Schools?
I can answer that one. I would say it's not enough resources available, if I can just put that plug out there. But I would say maybe try to contacting your local community mental health clinic. Often they sometimes run support groups. I know at Metropolitan Family Services we do. And there's also different resources online. I can probably put those in the chat just for the sake of time, but that you can definitely look up and to get some additional information if they have virtual groups online or they meet in person, or again, if it's just some material that is available for you. Thank
you, Tiara. Okay, great. And so then I think we'll wrap up. Nina Halstein, please, you have a question and we'll finish off with your question.
Thank you. I think this question is for Jessica. I hope I'm right. And I'm not sure how to talk about this, but during the pandemic, I have been doing so many projects and full of energy, and I moved my office and I did many things. And I was cooking a lot and very happy with what I was eating. And I lost 17 pounds over the course of, I needed to. And what happened, but I didn't do it because I needed to. What happened was I learned when you're not eating socially, it's a whole different experience. And it was really good for me to enjoy the food and be in touch with what was going on, because I stopped when I don't know if it was when I was full or before I was full, but I wasn't too full. I just would stop. And I think that's why I lost weight. That and the fact that I discovered I prefer eating twice a day instead of 3 times a day. I just found for the first time a really good thing for me. Now I'm sort of relaxing and not doing all those projects because I don't have to. And I think I'm gaining weight a little bit. And I'm wondering what energy or the amount of energy you have and that you're using, what that has to do with how you process food or what happens. I don't know what the question should be, but I don't want to get too conscious. I don't want to be dieting. I want it to feel right. That's all.
Thank you, Nina.
So, for the most part, my dietary advice to individuals is you do you within reason.
Mhm.
And if you're an older person,
I am.
losing weight unintentionally is not okay, right? We want to only lose weight intentionally through diet and exercise. So, you got to balance that. And if you find that you're gaining weight and you don't want to, that's also, we want to maintain. That's homeostasis is health.
Mhm.
And so one of the best ways to do that is to really breathe in between your bites and breathe during your meals, so that you're monitoring your internal cues and feeling it. We want to just be conscious eaters. And so, conscious eating and what foods we're bringing to the table, conscious eaters while we're eating, and how we feel, so that fullness. I think it's great. It's funny because I'm the opposite. Social eating, I eat half as much. When I'm by myself, I forget. I'm like, oh yeah, this tastes so good. I'm not going to stop because I'm not looking up to have a conversation. So, and each of us is different in that way. And that's really important to diet advice is always individual, and medical advice, all of it is very much on the individual level. So if you feel like you are gaining more than you want to,
it
take a
isn't
look at what
and it went down. It's not scary, but it made me wonder
Sure.
if now that I'm not using as much energy, if that makes a difference.
So that part of your question is fascinating. One thing I love talking about or love learning about is BMR, which is our basal metabolic rate. And that's the amount of energy we need to be awake and lying down still for 24 hours, not sleeping, just awake and still. Our BMR is about 80% of the calories we take in, sometimes 85, and only 15% of the calories that we take in is really used for the energy of walking and running and exercising and eating and sewing and Zooming and everything else. And so if your sleep is good, your metabolism is good. So one place to look is how much are you sleeping? Are you sleeping more or less? And then also look at your plate. Is it more fat? Is it more grain? Is it more fiber? And finding that balance and breathing while you're eating so that you can be consciously taking bites, consciously choosing foods, and consciously knowing, am I feeling more hungry or am I just feeling bored and this show is good and the ice cream tastes good?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Jessie, and thank you, Nina, for your question. Okay, everyone, that wraps up our final question for the night. On behalf of the Hyde Park-Kenwood Community Conference, I want to thank everyone for joining us. This was a wonderful community dialogue on health and well-being. I want to thank Alicia Harley. I want to thank Rebecca Bauk, Jessie Allender, Tierra Malone-Zacaro. I also want to thank Barbara Moreno-Paschal, HPKCC board member, for all of her hard work in planning this. And the conversation doesn't end today. HPKCC wants your voices to continue to be heard. If you want to learn more about HPKCC and get involved, please visit our website at www.hydepark.org. Please become a member of our organization, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. And thank you all for the resources. At some point very shortly, within the next several days, hopefully, we'll put this recording up on our website, and this information will be available to everyone. So once again, thank you all. Please stay safe and have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.